What's up, guys? So today in this video I wanted to talk to you a little bit about 1, being in zone of genius, 2, the principle by Rory Vaden of like deal or something along those lines, and also what it looks like to be in your zone of genius as an automated entrepreneur. So I'm gonna go into all of that. If you have some time, we'll be going for a midday walk here. But the first thing is being in your zone of genius. Now, I've heard this a lot from like people like Jay Abraham. I know I've heard it from listening to Rachel Bell and many other bigger entrepreneurs who have had very successful multi-6, multi-7-figure businesses. I've talked about it with many of my clients who are also multiple 6-figure founders. And I wanted to talk on this because I think it is the number one thing that plagues CEOs, is that they're doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing. So to be in your zone of genius, if you think about if you're not in your zone of genius, there's probably 100% of the things you do equal to 100% of the things you do, and 80% of the things you do probably drain you if you're not in your zone of genius. Because for me, an example is when I'm in school, when I'm doing schoolwork, that stuff drains me because I know I value getting the piece of paper, getting the diploma, and I'm in my last semester. I used to value a lot more of the work that goes into it, but since I've went on a new path, I would say. But doing schoolwork, I could do 3 hours of schoolwork that should take someone 3 hours, and it would take me like 5 or 6 hours. I would hate it. I would not like doing it. And then I would go and do like 2 hours of work on my business, work on myself, like personal development, do meditation, work on myself, work on my business, work on growing the business. And that would take 2 hours. But I would get like proportionally like 5-10x as much stuff done. So for me, like working in the business, that stuff is like, especially compared to doing schoolwork, is working in a zone of genius. Whereas working in a zone of genius for an entrepreneur, you even get to go down even further than that. So I know in my business, I can identify stuff that's not in my zone of genius. I know in other people's businesses, I can identify stuff that's not in their zone of genius. And I know this because I've been in roles where I'm not in my zone of genius. I've done work where I'm not in my zone of genius. I know I could do a very good job at that job, but I know it's not my Ikigai. I think there's a strong correlation between Ikigai and zone of genius. So I was very good at being a machine operator. At 2 different jobs, I was a machine operator, and I would say I was very good at it, but it wasn't in my zone of genius because I wasn't thoroughly enjoying the work. I knew I was there to get the money, which is the only reason I took the jobs. And I thought, like, that'll show I can do some hard work, and I worked there like 60, 70-hour weeks, and the factory was like over 100 degrees, so I got that, but it didn't fulfill me. It wasn't work that I enjoyed doing. I did it for the money for 2 summers and then quit. And so there's an example of where I knew I wanted to do it, and I really wanted to do the work, and I was fulfilling the monetary, the property aspects of my hierarchy of needs, but it wasn't nearly up to stuff actualizing behavior. So between now Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Ikigai, which is a Japanese framework, and being in your zone of genius, that's where an entrepreneur needs to be. And so for me now, for an entrepreneur, that looks like being in a place where their tasks are optimized. Most entrepreneurs that I know, I would consider them visionaries. And visionaries, to put it politely, they need an integrator. They probably don't like tech. You know what the value of tech and what it can do for you and your business, but you don't thoroughly enjoy like building out systems in tech. You might if they're your business, but usually you'd rather someone like an integrator to do that. And so to be in your zone of genius as a visionary CEO of most likely a remote team online, if you're watching this video, you need to be doing stuff that's in your zone of genius that drives the business forward. So that probably looks like something that's like what a visionary would do. So something related to creative, so like reviewing creative or creating a new Facebook ad strategy or doing some other strategic work or tactical work that then your team implements. So I think those are some examples of where you could find your zone of genius in your business. Now, I think it might be easier for me to tell you where examples where you're not in your zone of genius in your business are. Examples where you're not in your zone of genius, in my opinion as an entrepreneur, is clicking buttons. I think, like, say you're typing and it's like creative work like that could be, but if you're clicking the buttons to like go post something, unless you have to do creative work right around when that post gets posted, that's not in your zone of genius. If you're checking your email, that's probably not in your zone of genius. If you're doing repeat tasks that you do the same thing every week, that's probably not in your zone of genius. So to be able to be in your zone of genius, you need to follow what I brought up earlier, was the principle by Rory Vaden of the deal, or some people call it the like OAO or whatever it is. For me, I think the most important thing to do is if a task can be eliminated, if it's not serving you or the business in any capacity, eliminate it. So that's step one. If it doesn't need to be happening, eliminate it. And that goes down to the very minutia of tasks, or if you have a marketing strategy that's not serving you, it can either be eliminated or re-optimized. So the first thing is eliminate. The second thing is optimize. Now, in my opinion, the second thing is optimize because the third thing is automate. And I believe I've heard someone in the Airtable community talk about how automating, it was Chris Dancy. Chris Dancy, I believe, said something along the lines at the Airtable user conference that automating a process, a bad process, just makes a bad process run faster. And I agree with that, and that's why I put elimination first, then optimization. Because if you optimize a process, get it working really well, doing the clicking, doing everything, then you can go and automate the process. So if you eliminate, then optimize the process, then automate the best processes that you have in that optimized process, then you're going to have an ultra optimized process. So then the last thing in the optimize process, or that like deal framework, so you have eliminate, optimize, automate, and then delegate. So delegate's this last one. It's probably arguably like the most important one as an entrepreneur, because if you're doing a repeat task, say it's like 1 or 2 per customer, you need to hire a support team so that you can scale the business, so you can be in your zone of genius, which is probably not a repeat task unless it's something like super creative that truly only you can do. So then after you eliminate the task, optimize the task, automate the task, and then delegate the task. At that point, you still have a task laying there, and it's not in your zone of genius. As Roy Vaden says, I believe you're about to procrastinate the task, and you can purposefully, as he says, purposefully procrastinate a task. And at that point, you throw it in a little procrastinate bucket, and you might put it back through that funnel again later if that task ever becomes a priority. So those are the zone of genius, and then the OIO, the deal, my eliminate, optimize, automate, delegate, procrastinate framework, and then the final thing is what it looks like to be an entrepreneur in your zone of genius. So what that looks like is to be a 10 out of 10 in your zone of genius. That looks like doing tasks that you love, that you would consider in your Ikigai, which is a framework that I don't teach it, but I have people do it. And if you're in your Ikigai, then you're doing stuff that loves you, that the world needs, that they'll pay you for, and something else. But it's work that fulfills you. It's work that is likely at that self-actualization level in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's stuff that's probably going to get your business to the next level because you're in your zone of genius and because you have a team that supports you. And you probably have a team that supports you at that level because you've optimized, you've delegated really efficient processes that aren't costing you an arm and a leg. Automation these days for small businesses does not cost an arm and a leg. And it can be super powerful to get your business to the next level. If you're a small business and you haven't looked at Zapier or Integromat, I understand, because you might not be a tech person. But if you can look at Zapier or Integromat and AIRTABLE and Asana, and then use Slack to manage your team, then your business is going to be taken to the next level because you will have systems built around you that you always know where to find something or where to talk about something, and there's no more scavenger hunt. You'll have systems that you know how to use them for your zone of genius tasks. You'll have systems that, say you're doing creative and you need to review something, you'll know where to find that because you have a system and a structure built around that task. So I believe that there's nothing more powerful than an entrepreneur being or a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, a CEO, a business owner, being in their zone of genius. Because if you think about top-down leadership, it just flows down through the different channels. It flows down, and everybody can see that that person is operating highly, and then, as Rachel Bell would probably say, it's magnetic. You attract people that also want to be in their zone of genius. And at some point, if you follow the framework for more employees on your team, and you find out what their Ikigai is, and you find out what their zone of genius is, and you start plugging them into your system and have them do their zone of genius, and then you delegate tasks that maybe nobody on your team wants to do to a VA, then at some point, you're going to have a truly magnetic brain, and you are going to have truly one of the most efficient teams ever, because that is saying something to have multiple people, not just the founder, working in their zone of genius, because that's something that they love to do. Now, there's a lot of people that they don't want to be an entrepreneur, but they still have something that they really love to do that someone will pay them for, that the world needs, and all of the Ikigai steps. So, I hope this is valuable. If you're curious about any of that, you can request a time to talk to me. In the description, there's a request a consultation to speak with me or someone on my team, and we can talk there. But throw a comment in the comments section if you found this valuable, if you relate to it, if you think you could be an automated entrepreneur in their zone of genius. I would love to know. So without further ado, keep watching. I have a lot of Airtable tutorials on my channel, but I hope you have a great day and see you in the next one.